Did NASA fake the moon landing? Filmmaker proves Stanley Kubrick faked Apollo 11 landing. NASA forged the historic Apollo 11 moon landing videos with the aid of Hollywood legend Stanley Kubrick. Filmmaker and author Jay Weidner has shockingly claimed live on radio. NASA's July 20, 1969 moon landing has been right at the center of conspiracy theory discourse for the past 50 years. As the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission approaches, new questions are being raised about whether NASA ever went to the moon at all. Filmmaker and author Jay Weidner has now publicly revealed why he thinks the moon landing was shot in a studio. Appearing publicly on Coast to Coast AM radio, Mr. Weidner alleged Mr. Kubrick used front-screen projection techniques to forge the moon landing footage. The conspiracy theorist said, "I think they just decided for publicity reasons that it was probably better to have somebody do it here on Earth. Then they could go about their business and not reveal their secret equipment to the Soviet Union during the middle of the Cold War. So it isn't really all that big of a leap to say that they might have shown us something that wasn't quite real, to protect national security." Front-screen projecting is an in-camera visual effect pioneered by Mr. Kubrick in his film 2001, A Space Odyssey. He was a photographer. He understood lighting. He understood emulsion. He understood all the techniques of a photographer. That's how he got started. He came into filmmaking as a technician first and an actor's director second, and that suited NASA perfectly because that's what they needed. They needed someone who could solve problems, someone who could come in and technically solve the problems. The acting wasn't as important to them as the technical problems, and so Stanley began to solve the technical problems. According to Mr. Weidner, his own analysis of Apollo 11 photographs reveals strategically placed horizon lines behind the Apollo 11 set. These lines supposedly show up when contrast and focus editing is applied to the Apollo snapshots. But all of this is not evidence of NASA ever landing on the moon, Mr. Weidner stressed. Instead, the filmmaker said geopolitical tensions between the US and Soviet Union have forced NASA to fake the footage should the moon landing go wrong. This means Neil Armstrong was indeed the first man to set foot on the moon, but the video of his one small step, which was broadcast around the world, was not genuine. Mr. Weidner said, "I'm not saying we did not go to the moon. I believe we did go to the moon. I believe there are reflectors on the moon. They put seismograph machines on the moon, but I don't believe that what we saw was real. I think for political reasons, and we did have that great truth teller Richard Nixon in office when they landed, so we know that probably everything the government was doing was clean and straight." Filming the moon landing in a studio with Mr. Kubrick would also keep a number of secret technologies out of the hands of the Soviets. And should the Apollo lunar module fail upon descent, the world would not have to watch Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin die live on television. NASA typically avoids responding to moon landing hoax allegations, but the space agency has in the past firmly denied faking the ordeal. NASA said, "To some extent debating this subject is an insult to the thousands who worked for years to accomplish the most amazing feats of exploration in history. And it certainly is an insult to the memory of those who have given their lives for the exploration of space."